But it is important that shareholders get accurate, timely filings, and I'm very confident that Dalrada will soon appoint another auditor and will soon get the 10K filed and be back in compliance.
Hey everybody, it's Stuart Smith from smallcapvoice.com, and I want to thank you for joining us here once again today for a very important interview with one of our long-standing clients, and that's Dalrada Financial Corporation, traded on the OTCQB under the ticker symbol DFCO. We're lucky enough once again to be joined by their CEO, that's Brian Bonar. He's back from an extensive trip in Europe, where, of course, if you've watched some of our earlier audio interviews, you know that the company does quite a bit of work overseas all around Europe. But we're welcoming back Brian to talk about various topics. Brian, thanks so much for coming back on with us here at Small Cap Voice.
Always a pleasure, Stuart.
Well, Brian, let's start with the news this week. The dateline today is the 18th of October. The news came out yesterday, October 17th. And what we saw with your company is not unique to Dalrada Financial Corporation. I'm an investor in a company on the NASDAQ, ticker symbol ADMA, October 10th. They announced that their auditor was leaving. The company's stock went down about 18%. You experienced a similar thing this week. And as we dug into it, if you go to CFObrew.com, like coffee brew, CFObrew.com, it appears that roughly 40% of a 40% increase in companies that have announced that they will be tardy on their financial filing. And a lot of that has to do with a separation with their existing auditor. The article also states, and this is important, that the PCAOB, the standard and the board that governs these auditing firms that cover public companies, have been busy this year. In May, they adopted both new auditing standards. They were meant to clarify existing standards. Bottom line is there's more pressure than ever, more regulations on auditors. This is causing a bit of a shift with some of the companies out there. You had a strong quote in your news this week, and everybody bring up that news. Since we have you here, let's talk about that matter first and your take on it.
I think that Dalrada, just like many other companies, as you so quote, are suffering from this change in policies of the PCOB and the stress it's putting on auditors. And I think companies in a growth sector, just like Dalrada, that's transitioning from a development company into a product producing company, they are ideal targets for mistakes to be made inadvertently because processes haven't been tested and because the people are doing it are not as experienced as perhaps we would be in these matters. And it's just a strain on everybody, including the auditors and including the management of the companies. But it is important that shareholders get accurate, timely filings. And I'm very confident that Dalrada will soon appoint another auditor and will soon get the 10K filed and be back in compliance.
Well, and that's the headline, listeners. Again, viewers, Dalrada Financial Corporation provides update on the selection of their next PCAOB auditing firm. Well, Brian, on the Dalrada website itself, you had an executive insight article that you wrote earlier this month, and I found a couple of things in there, both exciting and maybe a little bit causing me a little bit of hesitation, and I'll tell you why. I was impressed by the many advantages that you were able to outline of the moving to the heat pump from a traditional HVAC system. Still, I was concerned by the factors that I saw that are currently limiting the consumer buy-in here. In certain states, we've seen some things change, and we'll get into the legal regulations and how they've changed in California and New York next. But what can DFCO do to help consumers see the light, if you will, when it comes to making that switch to heat pumps?
Well, what we're trying to do is show the user that the heat pump is in fact a great replacement for traditional air conditioning units. Some of the challenges we've got is that a heat pump is not an air conditioning unit. A heat pump is an electronic mechanical device that provides the same function as an air conditioning unit. Certain standards have grown through the years for air conditioning units that are now being applied to heat pumps. And Dalrada's on the leading edge of getting some of these standards in place for Dalrada's own technology, which is CO2 based. And I think it's just a transition, it's just a continuing show and tell. And for example, I and the rest of the executive team are paying market rates for Dalrada to install the home heat pumps at our homes and show that we stand behind what we are preaching. We're doing it ourselves. And I've got a fantastic result, frankly surprised that I put a heat pump on my swimming pool. And one of the things I discovered, maybe wrongly, I should have known this, but the heat pump has a different use in states like Arizona and Nevada, where in the summertime you can't get in a swimming pool because it's so darn hot. Well, guess what? A heat pump has a cooling feature. A gas heater to heat a pool can't cool it. So now you've got a double capability for certain geographic climates that was not available before. So I think it's just testing it and trying it and getting use of it. A lot of these things don't exist in Europe because heat pumps have been in use there for years and years, and they're very effective. So a heat pump is not seen as a strange item and people wondering, well, they're going to do the job or not. They've had years of practice and experience from it. And we just got to get through that here in the States.
Well, as I read your article, your blog on your website, I saw a lot of parallels of the solar buy-in, if you will, early on for solar. So we see the vast amount of advertising in solar still to this date. And I'm here in Texas where there's a lot of solar advertising still being sort of educational in its push, less sales marketing, more education. So people understand they're going to not only save money, they might actually get money back. With solar, the federal government eventually stepped in, and we issued our own article here at Small Cap Voice just last week talking about legislative incentives to drive product adoption. And our article highlighted what we have seen already in California with SB 1221 and New York's Local Law 97, which we've talked about extensively with you, as well as with Charles Vest. And my question is here, seeing the federal government step in and offer tax incentives to consumers that we've seen with solar, because again, the sustainability and just the cleaner system that a heat pump is with less emissions, less garbage into our environment. Do you see that as something that we can find a lot on the horizon?
Absolutely. It's inevitable. And I think next year something's going to happen. It's got to. Because in Europe, for example, there's certain incentives in the UK, for example, that the government will give a homeowner, I think it's £7,500, which is roughly $10,000, if they install a heat pump in their facility to get rid of gas boilers. So I think it's inevitable it's going to come. But I think also, Stuart, if I may, Dalrada is trying to provide a one-stop shop for this energy for a home. We're the only company that I'm aware of where you can buy a heat pump, you can buy a battery backup system, you can buy solar, and you can buy a home charger for your electric vehicle. That's an important thing because people get frustrated. They go through the process of getting solar installed, and then they've got to go and think about, well, who's going to give me a battery backup system? And then where can I get a car charging device for my home? And we do that as a system. You can buy pieces from us or you can buy the whole system from us. And I think that's what's going to happen. We're working with finance companies right now that offers financing for people that are buying the whole system. And I think the government will eventually catch up and they'll start offering these incentives to the homeowners in the States here, hopefully next year.
Well, that's important. And I think that's great that you pointed that out. So like companies, we love to see viewers when they vertically integrate themselves because it cuts down on expenses. But in this case, when you're a one-stop shop for your consumers, you're cutting down on that frustration. I'm sure you're cutting down on the expense. They finance with one company as well, less financing charges, less filing fees, application fees, things like that. So that's brilliant right there, and something we haven't touched on with you yet. So I'm glad you brought that up. And that really leads into my last question. We're coming to that time of year here as we wrap up 2024. We're here in the month of October 2024. We expect to see some big achievements from you and your company as it looks in terms from how you see it. So you're the CEO of the company. When you look back on this year, some of the major milestones that you've seen your company achieve, what do you see as the highlights of 2024 for Dalrada?
Well, a distinct shift from a development company to producing products. We've seen that not only in the heat pump side of the business, the green energy side, but in the deposition technology side. We finished their first EWOS product, which is a leading edge product. We are shipping the first product to a university in America for use and test. And when we see that in place, we're going to see many orders coming from it because it replaces technology that's almost 50 years old based on DOS operating systems, where our EWOS is based on the more modern software management systems, including the iPhone and so on, that allows people to manage it in a more friendly manner. So we see that as a significant growth. We see the heat pumps growing strongly. We hope to get the results of the GSA testing in the early part of next year. And that's why I've said that into next calendar year and to the end of our fiscal year, we're going to see dramatic changes at Dalrada in terms of its profitability and its sales.
Well, once again, it's a great interview with you, Brian. Thank you so much for making time for us here at smallcapvoice.com. A lot for us to think about in this interview. Listeners, viewers, I would love it if you would comment on the section below here or just email us directly at smallcapvoice.com. You can find all of our contact information. Brian, welcome back to the States. Thanks so much for the time again. Best of luck for you, your team here in 2024 and well beyond. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
All right, you as well. For Brian Bonar, this is Stuart Smith saying thanks so much for tuning in.